Hello there, today I will be reviewing Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson and explaining why I really enjoyed it. Also, there will be spoilers, so please don't watch this video if you've not yet read the book. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I know I said I was going to talk about why I really enjoyed this book, but I'm going to start off with its weak point, which, in my opinion, was the writing. Now, Sanderson's never been the best writer, but he's always been really good with his ideas, and his writing has never really damaged those ideas before. Until now, where I genuinely think his writing made the book a worse experience. Not only did it take away the potential for it to become even better, it genuinely made it worse because of the words he used. I think most of his writing was average, and then in some parts it was really bad, and in some parts the editing was pretty bad. So overall, I'm going to give the writing a 3.5 out of 10 because I think although most of it was okay, even that was a dip in quality from before, but most of it was okay, and then some of it just was, in my opinion, some bad word choices, some bad phrasing. But remember, this is mostly a positive review, so let's move on to the good stuff. Starting with the characters. For each of the characters, I'm going to talk a little about why I did or didn't like their journey and where they ended up at the end of book 5, which is the end of the first arc. Starting with Kaladin. Now, I personally didn't mind the therapy arc. I understand that it could be disappointing, especially since he seemed like he had come such a far way since the start of book 1 to the end of book 4. I could really see him having picked back up the spear and fought again. Or seen him having picked up the spear again and fought. But I think this worked really well too, especially for the ultimate destination that Sanderson had in mind for Kaladin. Now, my main thing is, I think Kaladin's arc here was more about destination than journey. Actually, I feel like this entire book was. It felt like Sanderson had such a clear plan for the destination that he forgot to make the journey along the way as important. Because books are really about the journey. They're not about the destination. That's why you can reread books and have so much fun. That's why you can have something spoiled for you and still enjoy the book. Because it's the destination that matters, and it feels like Sanderson has forgotten his own words. But more importantly, we're talking about the good stuff here. So, Kaladin. I really liked where he ended up. As much as I was just complaining about the journey before destination bit, I think Kaladin's ending was exactly the best it could have been. I think it really fit. I think it makes so much sense, although I don't like some of his cheesy lines, and the therapist lines specifically. I think it was overall really good journey to where he ended up. Now, moving on to Seth. Now, Seth felt a little bit like a broken record at times in this book, but it was still really good. I've talked before about how much I love Seth, mainly because of the way his speech is so different and his thoughts are so different. He feels so much like a unique person. But then we have his backstory, which was incredible. I think his backstory was the best one we've seen so far. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Seth. I agree with some of the criticism about like how his quest was really just like go here, defeat the boss, go here, defeat the boss. But at the same time, I think it was really impactful in a way that like it's sort of like reminiscing like his past. And although the biggest criticism that I agree with as far as Seth's journey is that the flashback sequences they happened after the important events with the characters. Now, I still found it impactful, like seeing it's just a different ordering, but I think it would have been maybe better had we really seen a little bit more of his journey first, but that could have ruined a couple of other things. So I think that was still really good. Alright, let's move on to the next few characters. On Dalinar, I think his arc ended really, really well. I mean, first of all, I think it really is the most Dalinar thing to do in that, one, he kind of just bullies his way and does what he thinks is best. He knows that probably almost everyone else is going to think the other way is right. But you know what Dalinar does? He does what he thinks is right, because what he thinks is right is always going to be the best move, because he is him, and therefore he's just going to be right. In this case, it actually was the right move, but that's beside the point. Second of all, it shows how far he's come and how much he cares about his family and how much he cares about doing what's right. And I know he's still a bit of a bully in that, like, he'll do what he thinks is right for anything else, but at the same time, he's still doing what he thinks is right. That's still good. He's still better than he was before. So, yeah. And then also just sheer willpower mentally and bullying Honor into, like, accepting him and Stormfather. And yeah, I think that was really powerful. But the spiritual realm as a whole, I think it kind of felt really repetitive at times and a little bit anticlimactic in that it didn't feel that important, or that the characters were taking it as such a important thing. I mean, I think Dalinar and Navani were, but Shallan and Renarin and Rlain were kind of goofing off a little bit, and that felt a little weird to me. But talking about Navani, she just felt like back to a sidekick again. I mean, not that she is Dalinar's sidekick, but this book, she only felt important. She didn't have as much of a presence of her own as she did in the last book, and that made me sad, because I really, really liked Navani in the last book. But again, I think we'll see more things in the future, because, you know, Dalinar's dead. So anyway, on to Shallan. Now, I love Shallan. I love Shallan more than probably 90% of Stormlight readers. I think her journey in this book was okay. It was pretty good. I mean, on the one hand, she was kind of like goofing off, but then again, she's Shallan, and she kind of just is an amateur at being professional and understanding the situation and behaving appropriately. Also, yeah, I'm excited to see where she goes in the future. Also, I'm pretty sure she's pregnant, like 90% of the fandom is, or something like that. And that's going to be interesting, to say the least. Also, yeah, I'm just excited for her journey in the next book, which I have to wait forever for. But at least it's not as long as Game of Thrones wait. So that's something. The last character I really wanted to talk about was Adolin. Now, I've always loved Adolin, at least since book 1. Since I knew Adolin has existed, I've loved Adolin. Adolin is wonderful. This book, I actually didn't love Adolin's journey in this book more than last book. I think they were on equal terms, but this book, the relationships that he has with the characters around him, this book really showcases who Adolin is. First of all, he starts to explore his identity apart as who he is, especially who he is in contrast to his father and who his father thinks he is. Also, I really liked his part about oaths and how he doesn't like oaths. He likes promises, because oaths don't care about what is right. They just care about keeping the oath, and promises are more like just better, more like him. He's less formal, and also he has a really good heart. But more importantly, the people around him were so entertaining. We've got Gox, who is incredible in this book. We see a lot more of him. We've got Maya, obviously, though she's not in the book as much. We've got, I forget what his name is, but the other general. We just see how much of a commanding presence Adolin has, but also a friendly presence, and he's just such a good person, and I think this book really illustrates that. So, now that I've done a little bit of ranting about why I love Adolin, let's move on to the plot/pacing. Now, I'm going to give the plot/pacing a 9, because, I realized I forgot to give characters the score. They're an 8.5, really great. But, also, I forgot to talk about Yasna. Yasna felt like a weak point, but she's always felt like a weak point to me because she doesn't feel as much like a person. In this book, she felt more like a person, but also less like herself, and that kind of felt weird. But on to the plot/pacing, which deserves a 9. Now, why? Because story bits. So many incredible moments, mainly the ending. obviously. The flashbacks were really well done, and I think that goes both with the story and the characters. What else did I think was really well done? I think there were definitely some moments in the spiritual realm that were done really well, but some parts that were repetitive, and that sort of adds and detracts from the score. And then also, lastly, I felt like some parts of Seth and Kaladin's journey were a bit repetitive, and so ultimately, wonderful. So, so good, but also a couple bits that were off, so 9 out of 10. Lastly, I'm going to touch on the world now. The world was definitely still amazing, 10 out of 10. I think there was definitely some info dumping with the honor bits, but it was intriguing. It was exciting. It was beautiful. It is, this world, so much of it is perfect. And that's why it's always going to earn a 10 out of 10 from me, unless it becomes terrible later on, which I really, really doubt. So finally, let's talk a little bit about the book as a whole. As a whole, I loved it. In my heart, it is a 9.5 out of 10. In my brain, it is a 7.75 out of 10. I think the writing, my heart doesn't care as much about, and also the characters, my heart gives them a 10 out of 10 because I love them so much. But there are definitely a lot of flaws in this book. I still think it's an amazing read. So I think the biggest thing that a lot of people had with this book is that they expected it to be a conclusion, and this was very much not a conclusion. They expected it to be like, oh, book 5, like, we've got a series of 5 books, we've got a series of 5 books, not one series of 10 books. And I think part of that is Sanderson hasn't been as clear on that, but also part of it is just fandom. People thought it was going to be that way, and so that idea really became a hit. But ultimately, book amazing. Thank you for watching my review, and until next time, farewell.